A ver, creo que ya está. Ok, se supone que ya está esto, pero déjame ver si lo puedo poner en pantalla completa. ¿Ahí lo sigues viendo?
Sí, lo estamos viendo.
En pantalla completa no se ve el texto de la ventana ni nada.
No.
Ok, ya quedó entonces. Déjenme terminar de descargar el resto de flyers para irlos pasando poco a poco.
Sí, para que tú los pases, yo ya los dejo ahí y tú los pasas usando porque lo que me los pasas para yo ponerlos ahí nos demoramos más.
Ok, vale.
¿Dónde tiene?
Ok. Uy, el problema es que no puedo. Al compartir pantalla no me deja ver las caras de los demás. Espera, a ver, a ver.
Está mejor, ¿no?
Porque me está pasando lo mismo. Me voy a conectar en el celular para poder ver, monitorear las caras y todo lo demás.
Es que no puedo ver a ninguno. Y tampoco puedo ver el chat. Pues sí estoy. Al chat sí, ya pude, pero no puedo, no me muestra las cámaras. Se supone. Ok. A ver si ya puedo. Ok. Sí, creo que ya pude poner la presentación. Ya se ve ahí, ¿no?
Sí, ya se ve, Cristian.
Ok.
Yo creo que ya damos inicio. Está pues, los micrófonos abiertos a ustedes conforme al protocolo que habíamos establecido. Así que adelante.
Ok. Por última vez, ¿ya tendrán el link de la transmisión en vivo?
Sí, de hecho ya te lo pasé.
Vale, gracias.
Sí, no, aquí. Lo mando por Zoom, te lo escribo por Zoom.
Si puedes. Sí, mándamelo por Zoom.
Ok.
No.
lo voy a poner.
Ok. Va, gracias, Nico.
No, ¿de qué?
Oye, Nico, eso yo pago.
Hola, muy buenos días a todos. Un momento, por favor. Muy buenos días a todos. Les doy la bienvenida, compañeros, profesores y público que nos acompaña por nuestras transmisiones vía Facebook y YouTube durante esta mañana. Agradecemos mucho su asistencia al día de hoy. Una vez más, tenemos la oportunidad de encontrarnos en estos espacios que como comunidad organizamos para instruirnos un poquito más, pero esta vez es para unirnos en la distancia que la situación global nos empieza a separar. Cada año desde el comienzo de esta pandemia seguimos extrañando los pasillos de nuestra casa de estudios, a nuestros amigos, profesores, nuestras clases, incluso las noches en vela y esos pequeños tiempos que teníamos para descansar entre las entregas que parecían eternas. Y ahora no nos queda más que la tecnología para seguir en contacto. Pero esa tecnología es la que nos da en este momento la oportunidad de seguir creciendo a pesar de las circunstancias. La pandemia no nos detiene y seguimos trabajando para obtener nuevos conocimientos, y esta vez es especial. Hoy, la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo se complace en tener una invitada particular, arquitecta y diseñadora urbana de Portugal, graduada de la Escuela de Arquitectura de Lisboa y del Politécnico de Milano, con posgrado en el Laboratorio de Investigación de Diseño en Londres y miembro activo de la firma de Zaha Hadid. La arquitecta Mariana Cabugueria Custodio dos Santos fue muy amable en darnos unos minutos de su tiempo para la ponencia denominada Del trabajo académico a la arquitectura altamente corporativa, proceso y flujo de trabajo. Mi nombre es Cristian y junto con mi compañera María José damos iniciada la conferencia del día de hoy.
Agradecemos también la presencia del coordinador en jefe de la licenciatura, el arquitecto Jairo Armando Lozano, así como también el apoyo que nos brinda la profesora Mireya Ocadiz por parte del Centro de Lenguas, para traducir en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. De igual manera, agradecemos al equipo del Servicio Social que nos apoya con la publicidad y las transmisiones en otros medios. Antes de comenzar, queremos pedirles a todos los asistentes vía Zoom que, por favor, mantengan cámaras y micrófonos apagados durante la sesión, a menos que se indique. La duración de la ponencia es de 1 hora y el tiempo indicado para preguntas y respuestas será de 15 minutos. Para esto, se tomarán en cuenta las preguntas más frecuentes realizadas dentro del formulario previo. Y al término de su lectura, se abrirá un espacio en el que son libres de escribir sus dudas inmediatas. La profesora Ocadiz nos hará el favor de traducirlas. Para los asistentes, si así gustan, pueden pedir realizar su pregunta con micrófono abierto levantando la mano en la videollamada.
Bueno, dicho todo esto, le cedemos la palabra al coordinador para unas últimas indicaciones. Arqui, por favor, si nos hace el honor.
Muchas gracias. Buen día a todos. Espero que se encuentren muy bien en esta mañana, junto con los suyos. Como bien comentó Cristian y Majo, pues cualquier ocasión es una buena oportunidad para saludarnos ahora en estas circunstancias. Pero hoy, pues lo es más, porque tenemos el gusto de compartir la mañana con una gran persona, una gran arquitecta, que nos va a platicar un poco acerca de sus experiencias, tanto de la escuela, de la academia, del trabajo y de la vida. Hello everyone, good morning. Hello Mariana, good afternoon in London. We are here this morning with so much pleasure to have with us an extraordinary person and a great architect, Mariana Cabugueria Custodio dos Santos, who kindly is responding to our dear students, Cristian and Majo. Cristian y Majo han contactado a la arquitecta para que pueda darnos en esta mañana algunos minutos de su valioso tiempo y poder compartir todas las experiencias, ¿no? For our community, it's an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to hear the experience and advices from an architect in the other side of the world who also works in one of the most important firms nowadays. Mariana, in the name of our community, thank you for your time, for your disposition, and your kindness. Please feel welcome to our community in a virtual way by the circumstances, but with all our heart and sincerely. Well, thank you. Gracias también a Majo y gracias también a Cristian y a todos los demás compañeros que están participando. Muchísimas gracias. Buenos días.
Hi, Haru. Thank you so much for your introduction. Hi, Christian. Hi, Majo. It's really a pleasure for me to have this invitation. I appreciate Mexico very much. You have my full respect. I visited Mexico 4 years ago. I'm quite aware that Mexican history is very important for the world history, so I couldn't be more honored to be here taking everyone Saturday for 1 lovely hour listening to me. So let's make this with much pleasure as we can. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to start by introducing myself. I mean, I had a very good introduction already, but so my name is Mariana. I am senior designer and architect at Zaha Hadid Architects. I am also a tutor at the Architectural Association Design Research Laboratory, the DRL, and I'm also a live 3D model software tutor. I teach live quite a lot as well. And today I want to talk to everyone about my academic work and how I did this shift from an academic work in Portugal to a highly corporate architecture firm, which is where I work right now. And I also want to explain a little bit what the project process is and what's the workflow in a big office for architecture. So I decided to split this presentation into 5 sections to make it more entertaining. So the first section, I'll be talking about me as a student in Lisbon and in London, and I was also a student in Milano. And then me transitioning from being a student to working at Zaha Hadid Architects. I cannot show all the projects that I've done because I do competitions. Most of them are they have a non-disclosure agreement, so they are secret. I cannot share them, but I can share these 2 projects that I've done, and they are online. I'm very proud of these babies. And then I'll be talking about me as a Maya designer, which is the software that I do the most. It's the software that we use in the office quite a lot. And what is the process of developing a project from zero in a big firm to, in this case, a competition, so issuing a project to competition. And then I'm going to walk through me as a teacher. What do I teach? What kind of students I have and where? And then in the end, I want to talk to you about what is that I do in parallel, which is something really important, which is beside work, what do I do? That's something that is really important to talk about here, believe me. So let's start with me as a student. So I studied in Lisbon, Portugal. I did my undergrad, my grad, and then my master's. I also studied in Milano for 1 year, in the Politecnico di Milano, and then I ended studying in London. So overall, I did 8 years of university, which is well done. I think someone, Christian, I think you're not muted. I think you're not muted, just mute. Okay. Oh, Nicolas, you're not muted. Okay.
Espérate que me está llamando el arquitecto.
So, after So I'm going to start with Lisbon School. Okay, so when I was a student in Lisbon, I was a bit of a different kind of a student. I was very wild in my approach to a brief. It was not very conventional. It was not something that I did on purpose, but for some reason, it was very genuine. I would take a brief and I would honestly feel what I do, what I feel about the brief. So that made most of my projects a little bit different than my colleagues' projects, which sounds amazing, but it's actually not amazing when you're a student, because you obviously feel that maybe there is something wrong with you. Maybe why are you a bit different? Maybe you're not understanding something. But for some reason, I kept on insisting, and when you're a bit different, you spend some time trying to explain what you're doing. So I ended working a little bit more than most of the people. I worked a lot just to explain my ideas, and because I really believed in them, and I didn't understand why it was so hard for them to come through. So I used to work a lot in this basement where you see me on the ground, a lot, like nights and nights in that basement, just to make my ideas to be understood. And it was quite a conventional university, which is fine. It was a very modernist university. It was very a little bit more about cubes and clean and white. And I was a little bit different, and my process was also a bit messy. So it was a bit of some hard times that I had, and especially when I was about to finish my university and my master's, I had to find a job in Portugal, which is a country that appreciates a lot modernist architecture, clean lines, cubes, boxes, and whites. And I was definitely not like that, and I was very sure that I was not like that. And it was a problem because this was the scenario that I had in front of me when I was about to finish my master's degree. And there was also another movement in Portugal in architecture that I think it was almost like an obsession in architects, which is the restoration of the old buildings and turning them into new buildings. And this was something that I was against from my core. I was completely against restoration for one reason, because I don't think that putting makeup on old buildings and restoring old buildings as if they were new, I think it's a twisted idea. That was just my principle. For me, it was like a plastic surgery to old buildings. I understand that we need to keep memory, but we also need to do contemporary architecture, which relates to us as contemporary individuals. So I was definitely in the wrong country. It was very obvious, and my ideas were not being taken as very lightly. So this was my final project. It was a contemporary, huge hybrid building in the center of the city. It was very controversial. Some tutors wanted to pass me and thought I was a genius, and some tutors wanted to fail me completely and avoid me getting the title as an architect. So when I finished, I was a bit worried, because you're different, but you're not sure if you're different because you're bad, or if you're different because you're just different. And maybe you should just move context and move somewhere else and find someone that is similar to you. So when I finished my master, I decided, okay, I don't think I should do the white Portuguese cubes, because I'm not good at it and I don't like doing them. So I need to find something else. So I started looking. It was a bit of a desperation kind of time, this in between ending a master's and continuing studying. And I had my full support from my family. And I had 6 years already in school, and I was kind of looking for more. So I ended going to the Architectural Association School in London. I went for the open day. It's a very big school. Very good architects passed in this school, taught in this school, and learn architecture in this school, like Chaim Kulas, Zadi, Cedric Price, Kenneth Frampton, and Stephen Hall. They all went there as students. So I had the feeling, and I thought, okay, I'm going to follow my guts, and I have a feeling that this is going to be good for me. So I moved from Lisbon to London for the open day. And as I went to the open day, there was this very big final presentation happening in this auditorium, a lot of people going in and out. And I decided, okay, I'm going to follow these people into this big auditorium that you see here. and it was super crowded, a lot of people in there. Patrick Schumacher was there, and they had all of these boards, super overwhelming boards on the wall. And then as they started explaining the project, it was very clear for me that everything they were saying meant something to me, and it was everything that I believed in when I was in Lisbon, all the theories that I believed in when I was in Lisbon, but 10 steps ahead. So I understood that it was very clear, okay, this is my place. It's not that I'm different because I'm weird, it's because I'm different, but I'm the same as these people here. So I moved from Lisbon to London, and little did I know that 1.5 years after, I would be presenting in that same auditorium with the same big boards for Patrick and for all of this huge Zaha community in that same place. So I started DRL. So it's not an easy place to be accepted. You need to send your portfolio. Usually 300 people around the world apply, and then you have the luck or not to get hired, to get accepted, I mean. So I was accepted. I was super excited. So it's important for you to know what the DRL is. It's a post-graduation course. It also includes a master, so it's a post-graduation master, and it has 3 different studios, okay? It has the prototype studio, it has the robotic fabrication studio of Sajay, and then it has the Patrick Schumacher studio for parametric design and more connected to the Zaha architects, okay? So it has these 3 studios. It's 1.5 years. So in the first half of this DRL, you get these mandatory courses of all the softwares that you can think about. It's 6 months of pure software knowledge, okay? I was being taught Grasshopper, 3ds Max, Maya, Rhino, Unity, V-Ray, C++. I was getting the classes for all of these softwares in a row, so extremely intense. And then in the end, you get the final project. In this case, I work with these 2 colleagues, one from Bogota and Nico from Chile. So it was a very Spanish, the language was very much Spanish. Every day in my life, it was Spanish. So for a year, we worked super well together. We were working every day together, very intense. And then we worked for Patrick Schumacher studio here. And then our thesis was basically a very big cluster of towers. Of course, this is design research, okay? A very big cluster of towers, exoskeleton towers. So it has no core and no structure in the middle. The structure is all on the outside, much like the Miami Tower of Zaha, okay? So the structure is all condensed outside. This means that you can release the center of the tower fully in its maximum height. So this was our final master. I presented in that big auditorium, like I told you, with Patrick and a huge jury members, a lot of people. And as I was finishing, obviously, like everyone, you start wondering, where do I go after this? What do I do next? So it was very obvious that being close to Patrick and being and doing something that is so close to the Zaha language and train of thought, I thought, okay, I'm going to apply to Zaha. I'm going to give it a try. And then I spoke with Patrick, and Patrick asked me for my portfolio, and he recommended me to, 2 months later, he recommended me to the competition cluster in Zaha Hadid Architects. I had my interview, and I was very nervous, of course, in my interview, but I was playing it chill and cool. It's okay. And then I got in. And I work for Paulo Flores. He's my director. He's also Mexican. He's the director of the Zaha cluster, which is competition based and competition driven. It also has commissions, but the Zaha cluster is basically the cluster that deals with the projects that have more design. That is more expressive, okay? Which the design is really something that has to be spectacular from the Zaha cluster. So I've been working for Paulo Flores. We are 30 people, 40 people. I've been working with him and my colleagues for 4 years now, doing competition. Each competition takes 4 months or 3 months, or what? This one I'm doing 1.5 months, and then you start another one, then you finish, and then you start another one. And it's been 4 years in this roller coaster. So this is what the Zaha cluster does, okay? Of course, this cluster also collaborates with the other clusters. It's not just Zaha cluster standing on its own. It also collaborates with all of the other departments from the office. We do the design mainly. So all of this, when I mean expressive buildings, I mean this. So it is very plastic. It has a very strong image. And this is what the Zaha cluster does. And there is one important thing about my cluster, which is the software that we do to model these buildings. And for me, this is crucial in our cluster. The reason why we are able to do this design is because we are good at using this software, which is Maya. Okay, and that's why I'm also Maya teacher, and that's why I invest and insist so much in Maya, because especially for students, it's really important. Not all offices can afford using Maya because the process is longer, but I believe all students should give it a go. Okay, so Maya is the ultimate 3D modeling software for high-end design in architecture and design. It's studied as a software for animations for Pixar and then DreamWorks. And then it ended in design and in architecture as the top software for fluid design and organic design. So they taught me Maya when I was on the RL. I had a terrible teacher. And that's the worst. When you need to learn something and your teacher is bad, like forget it. So this was my first model on the left, Maya model. It's awful. This little monster is really bad. Like I look at it and it has so many mistakes that I cannot even start with. And then on the right, in 1 year difference, I developed a whole cluster in Maya with my colleagues, with Nicolas Tornero and Juan Carlos. When I joined the office, I understood that Maya had a completely different way to be done, a more professional way. So the first sketch that I did was also terrible. It was this sketch. It was definitely a very academic sketch because I didn't know how to model in Maya as a professional. And everyone around me in the office, when I looked around at everyone's screen, everyone was so good at using the software. They were like masters. And I was doing this little crap, and I was really young. So I also remember that this sketch was actually on the wall of the office. It's a wall where we put all of our studies, and they had mine there, and I was so ashamed. I was walking in every day, and I knew it was on the wall, but I was kind of like looking down on the floor to avoid looking at this awful sketch. So I understood, okay, I need to focus on Maya, and I need to invest in Maya every day. And I was doing Maya every weekend, and every day after work, I was working extra to kind of catch up with my colleagues, so I was not the worst, because when you join, you're so young and you are the worst. It's normal. So I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a huge push on this. And 3 years later, I am a teacher in Maya. I am a tutor at the DRL. I also teach Maya there. These are my projects outside of the office. I cannot show the projects that I do in the office, but this is everything I do outside of the office on my weekends, after hours, after work. I pushed Maya and I pushed for this software to the limit. So this takes me to explaining you a little bit very fast what kind of language Maya is. Okay, it's not like Rhino. It's not objects. It's not a cube and then a torus. You can start from that, but it's not that. So in Maya, you manipulate faces and edges and vertices. Okay, this is the one good thing about Maya. Okay, so you can pull one vertex, one edge, one face. And then a very important feature about Maya is the Maya-Catmull-Clark algorithm. That's the very big trick in Maya. And this is what Rhino is trying to catch up as well. So in Maya, you work in mesh, which is you can see it on your left. Your mesh is like this. It's straight. You see it has no curves, completely angular. But then there is one little command in Maya, which is number 3, which applies a Maya Catmull-Clark subdivision display. Okay, it's a display because it's not changing my mesh. It is curved, but it's not changing my mesh. My mesh is still rectangular. But if I would apply this algorithm, the project will be fluid and curved. So whenever I'm working in Maya, I'm always doing 1 and 3, 1 and 3 to see what the mesh really is and to see what the mesh with the curvature means. Okay. also, it starts from cubes, from torus, from planes, and then you move on and start manipulating the edges, the vertices, and the faces. And this is how, in this case, you achieve the braid vase of Zaha. It's exactly this. I'm just rotating edges and then pressing 3 to have the algorithm applied and to have it curved. It's a very simple principle in Maya. This is one of the first projects of Zaha that was built, which is the Riverside Museum in Scotland. You can see that the Maya process here is so clean and it's so transparent. It can start from a very simple parallel pipe, and then you can just add more edges, and then you pull the edges in and out, and you apply the Maya Catmull-Clark algorithm here, and it's completely curved, super simple, like the fastest Maya model that you can achieve. And then with some tricks, you can even turn it into an airport, whatever you want. Okay, you can see Maya technique and you can see the Maya models on most of Zaha projects. If you look at them, from vases, they can become towers. From little skylights, they can become very big columns on the Beijing airport. This is all the same Maya technique, the same Maya tools. The same technique can do the Baku project, or you can just do a bench. The same Maya model can be a huge master plan, or it can be just a tea or coffee set. A master plan can become just a wall feature or just a candle holder. Same, a master plan. This is exactly the same Maya model, exactly the same Maya technique, but completely different scales. A master plan to a bench. Okay, so this is all what Maya can do. So I'm going to explain as if we were starting a project right now. Okay, so how do you start a project? What's the workflow in a very big project? I'm gonna explain you what's the workflow in a competition, because in a commission or a project that it's going to be built, it's a longer process. So I'm going to explain you what's the process in a competition, which is what I do. What's the workflow? How do you use the softwares? Who does what? I'm going to explain you this. So I'm not going to show you a Zaha project because I'm not allowed. So I'm going to show you a competition that I did on the side with Juan Carlos, whom I worked with DRL, and Begum Aydinolo. She's from Istanbul. And we did this competition 3 months ago, the Hyperloop Desert Campus. And basically, we operated in the same way that you operate at Zaha or some other big offices. So I'm going to explain you exactly how this is done. And you can also apply this for your student or your academic project. So let's say you get a brief, okay? You get a brief at school, you get a brief in an office for competition, you get a brief. So in your brief, you divide it in chapters. You have the objective, so brief, the site, and then what's the program. First important step is to make a schedule. Okay, I know this sounds like a blah, blah, blah. Everyone says, make a schedule. No, this is major. It's really important. The schedule is a deal breaker for you to succeed, basically. So in your schedule, it is really important that you include when is your design going to stop and freeze, when you have your project done and defined, and when do you start post-production. Okay, and I know it's a bit messy because when you're doing post-production, your teachers are already saying, oh, but change the design here or change the plans that. Yeah, okay, you can do minor changes, but let your teachers know, no, I'm on my post-production phase. And post-production should take in school a week, a full week. In an office, post-production takes 3 weeks. Okay, so usually I take 3 full weeks with the design frozen, the plans frozen, and I'm just doing post-production. So final drawings, final plans, renders, sections, panels, final boards, and booklets. Okay, so take a full week in your university. I take 3 in an office. Okay, once you get the brief, you're split in teams or you are on your own, and then you get the most important keywords of your brief and you create sort of a mood board. Okay, so for example, the Hyperloop is in a desert, the Nevada desert. So I got some images from the desert and oasis, which brings water and brings green. It's also a campus, so it's very important that you look for and you search for study cases. So what kind of buildings have been done for the same program? So very important, find keywords for creative and formal aspects, keywords for case studies, what have been done with this program, and then keywords for materiality, everything that it inspires you and it makes sense for this brief, okay? And then the team joins and I say, okay, so these are my references. My colleague says, okay, I have these references and I have these references, and then we kind of have a discussion about it. Okay, after keywords, you go to step 3. So in step 3, we have two teams. We have the planning team and the Rhino team. This is the team that takes care of the program, of the plans, of more generic stuff to make sure that you are complying with the brief. And then you have your Maya team. So your Maya team has an idea or a notion of how many square meters you need, but it's basically turning your keywords and all of your images and all of your research into shape, into forms, into design. Okay, and then this step 3 is all about this feedback loop. So I have an idea, I sketch something, it could be a hand sketching or it could be a 3D. These were some of my ideas in Maya. And then I sent this idea to the Rhino people. And then they tell me, okay, you are under the program square meters, so you need to increase volume. And then they send me how much volume I need to increase. And then I update the sketch and then I send them back, and then it's a feedback loop. This is the first step. It's a overall massing, overall design, step 3. Okay, and then it ends with achieving the final design. In this case, it was this one. I took the 4 leaves clover idea because this was the Hyperloop campus, and I took it literally to Maya. Literally, I modeled it in 2D, as you can see on the left. I modeled it exactly, and then I modeled in 3D in different plans, and then I just extruded the whole thing, and we ended with the final Hyperloop shape. Okay, don't forget, this is not an office project. This is my own and my colleagues for a competition. Okay, so this was the Hyperloop campus. The design was done. We were happy. The team was meeting. Everyone liked the design. I sent this to Rhino for the people who were doing, in this case, Juan Carlos, who was doing the 2Ds, the plans, and then some of the axonometric 3Ds. And then we continued split. So on one side, Juan and Begum were doing the plans and Rhino stuff. On the other side, I was in Maya setting the most important views for your renders, because it's very important for you to know that you're not showing every detail of the project, right? You're showing 4 views, 5 views, 6 views. So I set the most important views, and then I worked a lot on them. So you don't have to work on the whole project when you're doing a competition or a university. Focus on your views and bring them to excellence. Okay, so one side I was still in Maya, on the other side these guys were on Rhino. And then we move to our final step. You have the design frozen, you know exactly which views you're doing, so you start rendering. This is the post-production phase. So on post-production, some people are doing the post-production plans, final plans for the boards, colors, codes, all the details in plan. Some people are doing diagrams, which is really important. I do a lot of diagrams. I don't do just buildings. I do loads of diagrams in the office. And I also do a lot of renders. So in an office, usually we outsource our renders. So we send our renders to other companies. In this case, I sent to Metrica Visuals in Bogota. They did a very good job. And because I also know how to render, and I render a lot in-house at the office, I use Maya V-Ray and Keyshot quite a lot. I was doing my own renders on the side, so they were not as professional as the ones from Metrica Visuals, but they were also good. It's the ones on the left. Okay, so when you're doing renders, or when you're dealing with a company that does renders, it's important that you set your perspective views, right? Where's your camera? What's the big money shot of your views? And then you set a mood board, and then you say, okay, so here I want this kind of green. This part I want to be more high tech with more lights, artificial lights. And then you send this view and the mood board to the outsourced company, and these were the renders that they did for us. Also some renders they did for us. And then the final step of all project is the final panels, the final booklet, the final plans, the final everything comes together on a board, and this is usually 4 months or 3 months competition, and then we submit this, and I start over in my office. So competition done, new brief, new competition, and we start again. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you what's my teaching that I do. It's important. I do it live, so you can also have access to it if you want to learn Maya. I'm actually teaching for beginners right now. I'm announcing today I'm teaching a beginner's class for Maya. I also teach at the DRL, so after I finished DRL, I was invited to teach Maya. I teach the whole year. There are 40 students. This was back then when we could have live classes, like real life classes. It was a lot of fun, very crowded. And this was their final project this year. They did a lot of Maya. As you can see, very organic, very good Maya skills. They ended with very good Maya skills 1.5 years after my classes. And then I also decided that I should teach live because it's not fair and it's not enough to be teaching just for a school. When you have the whole world who is interested in learning this software, and maybe you don't want to join DRL or you cannot afford DRL because it's actually quite expensive, but you should be able to join, to have the same knowledge as what is taught on DRL. So I decided, okay, I'm going to teach Maya outside. I believe that Maya is a very good software for all students. And I think it has a lot of potential for a university. So I decided to bring this live, and I've worked with Futurely for webinars. So I take full full weekends, 2 days, 8 hours live teaching. This was some work that I did with the students. Also, this is another model. So it's really for beginners. As you can see, you start very simple in a low poly model, and then you just apply number 3 and a bit of detail, and then you achieve these results. This is an exercise that takes 2 hours, 1 hour to achieve. And then this was my big baby, which takes a full day, or in this case, I did it in 4 hours for the class with a bit more detail, and it has like a low poly level and then another level for details. And this was my favorite model so far done for this webinar. I'm also teaching at the Live Academy, also live on Zoom. This was one of the projects that I taught. This was a little bit more advanced level, but it was also simple to achieve. It's also just 4 hours. It's very clear that you can see that Maya has a very big input on the shape. Another cluster of towers, all in Maya, all taught in Maya. And then I'm also part of a platform, a live platform where you have all my classes available to be purchased, like a Netflix. So I also want to talk about what's coming next, what's ahead of me, what's my next year. So in 2021, we won this very big competition at the office, which is the Tower C in Shenzhen. We competed against Foster's, against UN Studio, against MVRDV, I think. And then in the end, against SOM as well, I think. And then in the end, we were like neck and neck, but we won, and I was super excited, and my team was also super excited. I devoted a lot of time doing this 3D, and it was also partially from one of my ideas of Tower. So I'm very honored to see one idea come true, and I had a very good project leader as well. And it was a competition that took me the whole summer 2020. And it was a very cool team. So this next year, I will probably spend 8 months moving this to construction and helping this tower to come to reality. It looks very challenging, so I'm a bit scared, but I'm very confident because I have very good colleagues and they are very talented. So when you look at this, I feel as overwhelmed as you feel. But I also trust my colleagues quite a lot. I know they are good at what they do. So it's kind of, let's go together to this challenge and bring everything that we have. So I'm very excited for this. And then on the side, I'm also trying to build a platform for Maya, a full Maya platform. So with, as you can see here, 9 classes, 8 hours each class from beginners to intermediate. So Maya is completely covered online for the first time in ages. Maya is going to be covered for architects. So this is my goal for this year as well. And then there's another part of all of this work talk that I've been doing, which is what I do in parallel of my office and of my teaching. And this is something that is really important for you to take in this session that I'm doing. So it is. I know that we have a lot of demands, and we have a lot of teachers asking for us to be the best, and we ask ourselves to be the best, and we kind of live for our work at some point. But it's very important for your sanity and for your freedom and for your creativity that you allow yourself to have a life in parallel of your work. Okay, so in this case, I'm modeling a chess set on my own. I just decided to do a chess set. Why not? Just to take my mind out of office and out of Maya teaching. And I did my chess set. It was also done in Maya. I had loads of fun, and I hope I can just get it built this year and get it manufactured. It's really hard because it has so much detail. It looks expensive, but I'm super excited to see it and to see it like come true and see it in reality. I call it the Royal Chess Set. And then there is something else in parallel that I always did, and I keep doing it. So of course this year was a bit of a different year, blah blah. But I always traveled a lot, especially when I was studying. I traveled alone a lot. It was very important. I used to do it because I felt the need of seeing something else, of getting out of my problems and getting out of my own reality, and understanding other people's culture, what's other people's routine. This is really important. And then if you look at Le Corbusier life, when he was 21 or 24, it's incredible how someone so rigid and so stiff, he traveled for a full year on his own in Asia. Full year traveling with a notebook, just doing drawings, understanding how do people live, how is people houses. So traveling is important. It's also important aesthetically for me to take good photos, to understand the aesthetics of the culture. And I think it's important that you keep this in your heads, that you need to get out of your comfort zone, and you need to get out of your country, and you need to see more. Okay, so this is how I am, and this is what I do every day. I have one part that is my work, my beliefs and my principles, and I have another part which is my traveling, my other creative side, and my personal life. And I make sure that I have these two very strong, side to side and well balanced. And I think that's it.
Okay. Mariana, so thank you so much for the time. I think it's important to me to schedule all the design, the process that you use to work and teach, and your tu proceso en la universidad. No sé si la traductora nos puede ayudar un poquito por ahí.
I can understand completely. I can understand completely.
Okay. It's nice. So, ahora vamos a proceder con la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Muchas gracias por tu tiempo. Ahora vamos a leer las preguntas más solicitadas dentro del formulario previo que se hizo a la universidad. The first question is from José Luis. What do you think has been your biggest contribution to society?
That's a fun question. So it's First, it's very subjective what contribution to society is. I have a feeling that contribution to society is something that comes as an aftermath. So after you're no longer giving your contribution, I believe that's when people realize that you did a contribution. So when you're doing it, it's not so much as a contribution, you're just doing what you feel that is right. Without knowing what's the impact of this in the world. So I would say that as a 32-year-old person, there is no real contributions, and not that I know. That is, I know what I stand for, and I know that so far the contribution that I have, it's a representational. I know what I represent, and I understand that as a student, I represent a student who was different and who was not very conventional, and the student that had to understand that maybe being different is not because you're not enough, you're just different, and maybe there's just a context where you belong. And that's what I represent, and this is a representation I want society to take in for you students who feel that it's so hard to make yourself understood. There is probably a place where you're well understood. So this is something that I want to bring to society, this representation. And as a professional, I think my representation would be the office should not be the only thing that you do, and should not be the only work that you do. The office wants you to have their work as the only thing that you do in life, but you should not do that. You should multitask. You should have more than one job. Even if contractual, you cannot have more than one job. Just get a hobby, monetize your hobby, get another income from another kind of activity that you do. So don't work only for your office. And also mentally, this is very positive for one reason. You take the pressure of your office out. So sometimes you have bad days in your office, sometimes your project is not going well, or you lose a competition. And if you're doing only that, your day is going to be a shitty day because you're only doing office. So what happens in the office will take your mood completely. When you kind of distribute your work to some other activities where you also get money from it or don't get any money from it, your mood is not depending to your job anymore and to your office anymore. Your mood is depending to whatever else you're doing. So when I have a bad day at the office, I'm doing something that is so successful on the side that, okay, it was a bad day at the office, but this one is going so well. Okay, so as a professional, this is something that I want to bring to society. This little contribution that I can bring to society. And then there's another thing for society that I hope to be representing, and it's something that I have in my heart, and it's my real personal goal. I want you to think that how many female and women architecture do you know from the Roman Empire, which the first architect is Vitruvius, century number 1. How many female architecture do we know since Vitruvius? Since the 82 year after Christ. I don't know how many you know. I know 2. I mean, I know more than that, but commonly we know 2. And how is this possible? How come? I really don't understand why. So my other representation in the world, I hope it to be me opening the doors for this to become 50-50. And me opening the doors for women to have the ability to express themselves and to do what they like to do most, like me. I'm doing what I like to do most. Because we work for representation. We work according to representation. You see someone doing something and you think, oh, he's like me, I can do it. But as a woman, we need to see women doing it and understanding, oh, she does it, I can do it as well. Like Zaha was that for most of us. She did it and we understood, it's possible. That means I can do it. I hope to be a little bit like that. Mariana is doing it, I can do it as well. So that's another contribution for the society I really hope to achieve one day.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. Now, Majo, could you say the second question?
Wow, that was a very fast but very emotional presentation. Thank you so much. The second question, it is, during these worldwide pandemic times, which do you think are the main points to tackle regarding architectural design?
I would say that probably architectural design is not going to be affected as much for one reason, you need to convince your client that changes need to be done in order to do changes. You cannot just do changes and ask for your client for more money for changes. He needs to be convinced, and I think that's really hard. When you're dealing with millionaires and billionaires, it's really hard. But I think that this pandemic brought something really important, which is more for architectural practice and team workflow. I think we realized that the work still flows and we still work well in teams, even though we are not in the same physical space. And this can be quite revolutionary in terms of office structure. So maybe you don't have to be in the same physical space in order to do architecture or to build a building, to get a building done. So I think that's what pandemic brought. It brought a little bit of faith on a different kind of structure, on a digital structure.
Yeah, thank you. Also brought us the opportunity to have you here. Because in other time, I don't know, maybe we didn't talk that we can talk to other person in the other side of the world, and now we have you here. So thank you so much. The third question is going to say by Christian.
Ok, antes de continuar, queremos decirle a todos los asistentes que pueden comenzar a formular sus preguntas en el chat de la reunión. La traductora nos va a apoyar con decírsela. Y si quieren decirla ustedes mismos, pueden levantar la mano y se les da la opción de que puedan encender su micrófono. So, Mariana, the third question is, which are the tools we must use to defend a project?
To defend the project?
Defend.
What do you mean? To get a project done, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Let's take it as that. I'm not sure what to defend. To defend, like it going to jury the tools, or?
I think what is defend your project with maybe issues que puedan tener, por ejemplo.
But like, what's the word for Spanish in defending? Like defender?
Ajá.
Okay.
Okay.
Because defending in English means something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So you mean to explain the project? I would say I'm really a big fan of physical models. I know we all like renders, and we all like to see what kind of space you've thought, like in an image only. I'm a very big supporter of physical models, and I did them a lot when I was in university. I was quite obsessed with physical modeling, and I still think it's very convincing when you do very big physical models and then you show it to a judge. So I would probably, when you're speaking and you're defending or presenting your project, I would keep your physical models all in front of your jury, and I would most likely make your physical model open up in different like sections. It's super cool when they open in sections, or you can take the roofs out and you can peek inside. So I would definitely say that physical models are really important for your finals presentation. And then definitely plans are huge and super important, and sections, of course.
Okay, thank you so much. And the fourth question, Majo, please.
How do you get inspired for your design process?
So it was a little bit like what I showed the other day. So for me, I think everyone has their own way to get inspired, and all of the ways are valid. So there's not a recipe to get inspired. I personally like to read the brief and like to see what's the culture of this project, where is it staying, so what is the city, what kind of people are they, and usually cultural references are very important for me when I'm doing a project. I know when you look at the 3D, you barely see it, but what's important is it drove you to get into that final result. Or for important keywords, for example, the Tower C that you see, it's basically the concept behind it's two buildings that are kind of hugging. That was my initial concept. So the brief was the twin towers, just that, twin towers. So then I started looking, what can I do as different twin towers to make them elegant and very vertical. So I decided, okay, let's connect them and making them hugging each other. And then my other colleagues, they had this idea, okay, they also want like to take advantage of this very green park that they have. So they said, okay, let's bring this green up the tower like a wave. So this is just another concept. And then you go online and then you look for everything that makes sense when you say a green coming up the tower like a wave. And then I look at the nature, I look at a lot of images, and then I try to model what I see. So that's why you see like two buildings hugging and then a wave for green coming up.
Thank you. It's so interesting.
Thank you.
And finally, the fifth question is from Mirna. What does it mean for you to be an architect? How would you define your architectural work?
So what does it mean to be an architect? You know, when I started architectural school, I thought that being an architect meant being an artist. And then you understand very quickly that it's not like being an artist, and it probably shouldn't be like being an artist. It's leaning towards science and engineering more than leaning towards art. I respect people who do art with architecture. It's not my favorite. I like to understand architecture as buildings and business kind of exercise, and not so much as like an artistic expression. But so then I moved from this is an art to this is pure science, and this is more based on construction, and that's what I thought that an architect was. And then when I landed at Zaha, I understood, okay, maybe there's kind of a marriage between this artistic expression and this science, profession of science, which it really is. So I started as you start this brief as like not just an artistic mind, but also who are these people that I'm going to build for, who is going to live in this building, who is my client, what kind of structure can I use in this building. Okay, so you kind of model these artistic creative ideas that you have into pure reality, and into this is going to be part of everyone's lives, and it's going to be on their every day. So what can I do to make their experience more pleasant, and not so much like what do I feel like doing, because this is like a painting, you know. So I kind of married both, and I can be a little bit artistic but still understanding that architecture is not an art. So that's what I think an architect is.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now we have a question from Isaac Medina. He's president of National League of Architecture Students de Línea. Isaac, si quieres decir tu pregunta, puedes activar tu micrófono.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Mariana. I'm really happy to listen to you. I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and I'm a big admirer. So thank you very much. I think it's very important for Mexican students to hear about the workflow, because here in Mexico, we don't use those kind of tools. They are not taught in our schools. So I think it's very important. And I have a question about the workflow. You talked to us about it starts in Maya and then it goes to Rhino. But what happens next? What happens when it goes to construction? I know that there are like some procedures to make it, for instance, BIM with Rhino connection with ArchiCAD or Rhino inside Revit. But at Zaha, what do you use for construction?
So not ArchiCAD. So let's say that we won the competition and then the project gets back to us, to the office. I stay longer in it because the client also wants some changes in the design, and that means Maya. So every time you need to do design changes, you need to stay in Maya. But then it also comes the most important part for construction, which is rationalization. Okay, and panelization. So when you do these kind of things, you need to, let's say, the facade of a New York project from Zaha. You get this facade done in Maya, and then you bring it to Rhino connected to Grasshopper, and then you start splitting that into molds that are equal. Okay, so when you go to construction, you say, I want 13 of these molds and 60 of these molds. Okay, this is what Grasshopper does with this model. Okay, so Maya, Rhino, Grasshopper, and then Revit, because Revit connected with Rhino now, which is a good thing, but it seems like Revit is still a bit behind. Like last year, some offices actually complained to Revit because they were not catching up. So we still work a lot in Rhino and Grasshopper. So in your Grasshopper will do the panelization work, your Rhino will do all of these panel rationalization work as well, for glass, for curvature, for everything. So traditionally it will be Maya, and then you stop Maya for good, and then you do Rhino, Grasshopper, Revit, Dynamo sometimes, and AutoCAD. Everything is done in AutoCAD.
All right, thank you very much.
We have another question that is from Paulina. So here you have your space. Paulina, ¿puedes hablar ahora?
Hi, good evening. I think I speak for all of us, like students, saying that we are so thankful for you to be here. So I think that all your designs has what we call like organic architecture, with all these curves and not being square at all. So I want to know, how do you figure out the process of brings a design like yours with a no conventional way of construction to reality, boiling it and make it possible?
Yeah. So we do also cubes. You just don't see them much. And when the office does cubes, you have all of this comment section on the internet saying, this is not Zaha, what happened to Zaha? But we do cubes, of course, like everyone does, because of gravity and because of budget. Not everyone has the budget to do everything curved, and there's no reason to have everything curved. Like at Zaha, I still need to defend the curve. I need to say why this is curved, believe me. Otherwise, they would say, why is it not straight? You're just spending money for no reason. So it's usually curved for a good reason, and it's usually where your money is, or where your client's money is. So don't forget that our office, every time it works or it has a competition or some projects, it's always collaborating with some engineering firm. Okay, we don't have engineers on our own office. The office works with engineering firms like Arup or AKT, or a lot of very good engineering firms. So we are also like going back and forth with our design and their work. And even when we do competitions, day zero, we have meetings with engineers and with consultants. Not just engineers, also landscape designers, and we have a lot of consultants, electricity, water, everything. So our projects, these office projects, they are only possible because they work with these consultants, and because this is a collaboration between firms. And this is how you get your curve done. And obviously the office challenges these consultants and says, this curvature, this huge curve. And the engineers will come back saying, okay, it cannot be that big, or you have to rationalize your curve in order for the structure to work. So it's like this back and forth work between us and consultants and us and consultants.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, the next question is from Ian. Ya puedes encender tu micrófono y hacer tu pregunta.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Mariana. First, it's a pleasure. My question is, how do you face the fair when you present the projects? As you talk about, you present different ideas and different type of architecture, and it's difficult that most of the different architects comprehend your ideas and your expressions and all that forms. How do you face that fear that most of the students have? And sorry, I'm very nervous. And how do you...
No, I understand completely. It's very funny that you're asking that, because it's exactly the same fear. It doesn't go away. So in the same way that you feel a little bit like nervous when you're explaining your ideas in school, I see very grown-up people in Zaha very nervous when they're explaining their ideas. Even I am kind of, everyone is kind of taken back because we do ideas, and that means that we are exposing our intelligence and our our creativity so much. It's a lot of exposure. We are completely naked showing something to someone, and they're like, I like it, I don't like it, and you take it very personally. As if it was like an offense to you, and I think that fear, it never goes away, but it's funny. It's something familiar, and I think it's a bit of adrenaline. It's an adrenaline that I don't think that you should lose. So this fearless showing of ideas, if you lose it, it means that you don't care about them. So when you're a bit scared, it means that you really cared about what you're doing. And I've shown a lot of crap. I've shown like studies that I'm very ashamed of, like really, and to Patrick. And I'm like hiding, like, oh my God, how can I defend something that looks so bad? Like even some days, like I'm looking at what I'm presenting. I'm like, what can I say to save this? But everyone takes it serious, and everyone talks about it as like a serious thing, and then you should even laugh about it. Sometimes I had a client saying that the design I did, he didn't know it was me, but he said the design I did in China, it looked like the top of like the sanitary, what do you call, like a sanitary object. He looked like, he said like, it looked like this is where I go to poo. He said this, and I designed that, and you have your client saying that, and you have to laugh, and you're like, that's so funny. Not. So don't lose that fear. We all have it. Even like the person that looks so confident in front of you, he's feeling the fear. So it's fine. Just embrace the fear and laugh.
Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you.
And we have another one. It's Fernanda. Adelante.
Hi, thank you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Fernanda. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, but I think like the most important question is, because like at the school, we are always taught that it's important. It's more important the functionality of your project over the shape of your project. Like you first have to have the functionality like all perfect and it has to function, and then you see like the shape and you create it. But I noticed that for like some like your projects, you first like do a model and you create the shape, and then you start working on the rest. Well, I don't know if that's like how it is, like first you create the shape and then you do the plans, and then you like you put the bathrooms, and I don't know how do you plan it.
It's more or less simultaneous, but still, I think that it's very subjective if you do form first and what is more important for you, form or function. Even in the office, I know that some people have different opinions. I really like I'm very pro of functionality. I really think it's really important I think there's no reason for a building to have a shape that doesn't work. That's art for me. That's not architecture. So I think functionality is really important. When I take a brief, I honestly like to do the form and the poetics. We call it the poetics first, just because I have that first instinct. So I follow that instinct before it fades away, because when you start thinking about functionality, your creativity also fades a little bit. So my first approach to a project is my instinct. What's my shape instinct? What's my form instinct? Even if it's out of scale and it's whatever. What's your feeling first? You need to grab that second, because then like with time, your ideas will start to be more rigid. Okay, so when you have your project, the first thing you should do is like, what's my first gut? What's my gut saying? And then you have your shape. Of course, then after you understand, okay, but so maybe this can work, and it could be a kitchen, or it could be like an auditorium, but all the rest is not making any sense. So you start like kind of kind of sculpturing it in order to be functional. Okay, so you start taking some things out and adding some things in order to have function working. But my first instinct is to do what my guts are saying, and then I make it functional. But definitely function has to be present. The building has to work. Like I know a lot of people like artistic buildings. I'm not a fan of Frank Gehry. I'm a fan of Peter Eisman until a certain limit. I don't like when architectural is just a scenario and entertaining scenario. So function has to be there.
And well, I don't know if I can ask something else, but you were saying that, well, it's so cool to know that you are like at the level that you're working, you still feel like afraid to show what you're doing, because it's really hard to like sell what you're trying to do, like
it is,
because well, I appreciate that you can like share that with us, because it shows that even like at the level that you're working, it's still like so scary, right? But I think that's what
it is,
like I think it's what it gives you, like it's exciting, I think, to be presenting something that you're creating. I know, and I really want to thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
I know. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Está apagado tu micrófono, Cristian.
Okay. So, Mariana, can we ask you some questions from Facebook and YouTube?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Okay. This is from Freddy Ramírez. Si nos puede ayudar la traductora, por favor. Recién realicé un proyecto en el concepto de neofuturismo. ¿Qué conceptos importantes toman en cuenta para realizar este tipo de proyectos?
Can you repeat the first part?
Yeah, please repeat the question.
Yeah.
Recién realicé un proyecto con el concepto de neofuturismo. ¿Qué conceptos importantes toman en cuenta para realizar este tipo de proyectos?
Neofuturismo.
Yeah.
I think I'll probably start looking a little bit into cyberpunk, sci-fi. I think there's something interesting there, that it's not brutalism and it's a bit more futuristic, but it combines a bit of both. So start looking at some of these panoramas that were done for the Blade Runner movies and all of these cyberpunk kind of movies. And of course, they are very formal, but I think neofuturismo is a bit like that. Look into that kind of scenarios. I think it might be worth a shot.
Okay, thank you so much. And the next question, please, Majo. It's from YouTube, I think.
Yes, it's from David Cabugueria from YouTube. It says, Mariana, I still sigo de cerca tus publicaciones y todas son muy, muy buenas en Instagram. ¿Sería posible en algún momento tuvieras un canal de YouTube o algo similar donde poder acceder a los tutoriales de...
I think YouTube, it requires a lot of work. So I like when I'm invited to speak with a cool YouTuber, Hishab, on Blessed Arc. I really enjoy it. He's a lot of fun. But I wouldn't do a YouTube channel because it needs a lot of work and a lot of editing. So I still like architecture. I like to work as an architect. I use Instagram as a way to show my work and to get students. That's why I do Instagram. I use Instagram for work, but for example, Instagram was never meant to be a working tool. It was meant to be my personal life and like my escape from work. But then it started changing last year, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna include my work in here because I think I can get students from here, and we can speak a little bit, and we can come closer, professionals and students, which is like a connection that we have it like so separate that I think we should bring it closer. So that's also, I started bringing a bit of work to Instagram, but before it was just my personal life. YouTube, I don't think I will spend much time doing, to be honest.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have several fans around here. The next question is from Ali Chavez. It's not a question, but I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time, and it's so inspiring for me.
Thank you.
Is there another question? Tenemos otra pregunta en el chat. Ok, Isaac Medina quiere volver a hablar. Puedes hablar, encender tu micrófono si gustas.
Sorry for asking too much.
That's fine.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have another question. I was thinking about, I was taught at school that for designing, for instance, they gave us like the list of spaces that we need to include in the design, and they have like a different amount of meters, right? So the recommendation of my teachers is to create a grid and use modules. But that's why we never get out of the box, because it's rigid. It's a grid. So what's the difference between that and what you do? I don't know if in Maya you can have like closed spaces and know at real time the meters, or how do you do it to make it work with the?
I work with the regular grids as well. For example, I'm doing a project right now that has a super stiff grid, like 8x8 kind of grid. So, and the building is within that grid. And sometimes the Zaha buildings are done within a regular grid. You just cannot tell that it's regular. So I'm facing that challenge right now. How can I kind of go against the regular grid and this parallel kind of obsession? And how can I do something more dynamic? So usually I'll take advantage of the diagonals. So you can do this kind of grid, or you can do this kind of grid, okay, without being too irregular. So the perfect 45 degrees of a grid, sometimes it works. And you work with the orthogonal regular, and then some of them oblique, and that goes against the box. And yeah, of course, in Maya, you can do this, of course. The thing is, I know that we have a lot of frustration in school when we have to deal with orthogonal grids. But you know what, like you will have your chance to do non-orthogonal grids in the future. So it's good that you're angry that you have orthogonal, that you're doing boxes. It's good that you provoke your teachers with non-orthogonal boxes or non-90 degrees kind of boxes. It's going to be a provocation, and it's usually not taken like lightly. They will take it serious, and probably they won't be happy about it. But at least like keep your anger and use it after. Don't worry, because if you want to do outside of box, you will do outside of box in the future.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so Mariana, it was a pleasure meeting you and having the opportunity to contact with you. And you're welcome to Mexico wherever you like, and when the pandemic ends, of course.
I hope so.
Now we proceed to reading the recognition delivered by the university. Arquitecto Jairo, por favor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mariana, for this great talk. We are sure that your words will find echo in our students. So if you allow me, I will proceed to share my screen and to read this recognition.
Thank you, Jairo.
Just 1 minute.
In the meantime, I want to say thank you so much for your time, sharing your knowledge, and something very special that you say, that you're opening the doors for women and all around the world. That it's so important, and it's a cliche, but we must work as a team. So thank you so much for that opportunity.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you for saying this.
You have your house here in Mexico, the common phrase. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for saying this, Marie.
Well, now it's Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo, Instituto de Ciencias Básicas e Ingeniería, grants this recognition to Mariana Cabugueria Custodio dos Santos for her participation in the conference. Mariana Cabugueria, from academic work to highly corporate architecture, project process and workflow. directed to the architecture community of our university, Minera de la Reforma, Hidalgo, Mexico, February 13, 2021. Sincerely, well, myself, Jairo Armando Lozano Hernandez, coordinator. Once again, Mariana, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jairo.
Thank you so much for your
It was a pleasure.
Experience, your words, and your kindness. Like Christian and all say that you are always welcome to our community, and we hope to have you sometime in the nearby future. You are always welcome. Meanwhile, thank you for all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and a great Saturday.
Yeah, thank you for answering my message, Mariana. I expect a much longer response. So,
of course.
Okay.
También queremos agradecer al arquitecto Jairo, a los chicos de servicio y a la maestra Mireya por su disposición a que esto fuera posible y necesario. Esperamos que les haya gustado.
Muchas gracias, chicos, también a todos los que han participado, al staff de servicio, Cristian y Majo, muchas gracias por todo el esfuerzo mostrado. Que tengan un buen día.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Good night, Mariana.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.